Hey guys, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today, I'm going to show you how you can use Azure Container Instances to host your containerized applications. ACI or Azure Container Instances provides us a general purpose serverless containers as a service, which can be integrated with Azure App Services, Azure Logic Apps, AKS, Azure Functions, and many more. This is going to be a basic demo just to show you what ACI is, and this will be a part or first part of my multi-part container series, which I'll eventually talk about AKS, Kubernetes, and other container-related topics. So I don't think there's anything else. Let's check this out. So, what are containers? First of all, this is not a container or Docker 101. I just want to give you kind of like an idea of what they really are before we actually go to Azure Container Instances. Because containers are confusing. They are a buzzword that everyone is saying, but not everyone really understands. Why use them? Why are they better than virtual machines? It would still depend on what you really need, but I'll be focusing on why you should use containers. So containers are standardized unit of software that packages up code and everything it needs, such as dependencies, so the app or software can run. Containers are becoming my and the preferred way to do the packaging, deployment, management of cloud applications over virtual machines. And why is that? To summarize, deploying apps on containers are much more lighter than having them within virtual machines. To give you more context, here's how a virtual machine would work. Let's say you have a couple of applications. Each runs on their own virtual machines. One's a lot lighter, one's a lot heavier because it requires a lot of dependencies. Now, if some, if not most, of these dependencies are already existing on your host OS, but instead, I'll have this whole VM under to handle this application. Same happens with the other VM. Now, the magic happens with a hypervisor. It may be Hyper-V, VirtualBox, or VMware. They're all hypervisors anyway. So anyway, basically, what happens is that the apps live inside the VM, which has its own OS that's being managed by hypervisors that lives inside host OS on your hardware. So that's a lot. Again, as mentioned earlier, your host OS might already have the dependencies that you need for your apps. So why not just directly run the apps under the host or on the host OS? The thing is, my host OS might break, might mess things up, or maybe I might change something within it. So, with the help of, let's say, Docker Daemon, these apps will get whatever they need. Only the dependencies that they need in order for them to run. The Docker daemon will broker the calls between the apps and the host OS. Now, this is a much lighter way to run the applications. So, ACI, or Azure Container Instances, is basically serverless containers. What that means is that, in contrast to what is done standardly to deploy containers wherein we launch virtual machine containers, images, and Docker images into that VM, with ACI, you simply point to the container or Docker image and tell ACI to deploy the image. And voila, you can interact with the container. ACI takes care of managing the infrastructure, etc. It is very lightweight, fast, and easy way to get your containers up and running in a couple of minutes or less, actually. So, when you should actually use container instances? For scenarios where you need full container orchestration or containers, including service discovery across multiple containers, auto scaling, and coordinated application upgrades, we would recommend Azure Kubernetes Service or AKS, which we'll talk about in the near future. Um, but if we're talking about a scenario where we want to operate in isolated containers, including simple applications, task automation, build jobs, Azure Container Instances is a great solution. It's not necessarily only for dev testing, as most people might think, but yeah, I do agree that it's mostly used for dev tests. So I'll be doing a few demos to show you how you can deploy container or Docker images to an Azure Container Instance and where else you can use it. So let's jump in. Alright, so we're here on the Azure portal. So first of all, what we want to do is to create an Azure Container Instance with a container image. So it can come from anywhere. So we can press add so we can create a container instance. So let's just select a demo resource group and let's just give it a name of ACI Hello World for the demo. The region would still be the same because I'm from Southeast Asia. And now we can choose where our image will come from. It might be from a quick start image, just a quick demo. Maybe coming from Azure Container Registry, which we will try out later. Basically, this will come from our Azure subscription itself, and we have like registries we can create, and it can have images. And the last one is a Docker Hub or other registry, which is a public one. Now, this is how it would look like on a Docker Hub. You can search any image if you need to on the Docker Hub, and it will provide you this command so you can pull it wherever you want to. You can actually copy this link and paste this so we can have this specific image inside our ACI. But since it's also on the quick start images, let's just pick that. So let's just pick this one. And for the networking, we can actually provide a DNS name. Let's just say ACI demo. Hello world. And let's just press review and create because we don't need to change anything else. So we just need to wait for a while for this to be deployed. But basically what we are expecting is we use that quick start image, which is in a hello world image, and it will be deployed to our Azure Container Instance. And that is a website, so we can try to access the DNS earlier or the IP address, and it will navigate us to that website or to the web app. So now it's done. We can press go to resource to navigate to that specific Azure Container Instance. So what we can do is we can actually access the IP address, and it will navigate us to the web app. This is the Hello World web app. It shows us just the very basic display that it can provide. Now we can also use the DNS, and it will show us the same thing. Now that is again the very basic of the Azure Container Instance, where we use a sample container image. So we can go back to the Azure or to the Microsoft Azure portal and create a new container instance coming from an Azure or from our Azure Container Registry. So what we can do is we can create a container registry first. I already have one actually, but we can create one if we want to. So let's create one. Again, coming from our subscription using the demo resource group, and we can provide any registry name. Let's say ACI demo reg. Hopefully it's not taken. There we go. And let's keep the settings as is for the others. And we can just review and create and press create. This might also take a while. And it's done. We can now go to the resource and we can see the list of repositories here, which is the most important one because this is where we'll see our images. But since none yet, let's get one and add it into this into the repository. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have, or I already have, a repository, or rather a code within my Azure Cloud Shell, or within an Azure storage, and we can access it through the Cloud Shell. So if it loads, try refreshing this. There we go. It's now loading. Oh, failed to provision the Cloud Shell. That's weird. I'm going to try to restart it. There we go. We've connected finally. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is the list of the folders within my Azure storage account. So this is all the folders I have within this storage account, and what I exactly want to access is the ACI-Hello World. So that's not exactly the Hello World app, though I've started from that base, but I've already added something, and I'm going to show it to you. So I'm going to go to the ACI Hello World, and I can just press or type in code dot, and it will open up this VS Code looking editor, and I have here my app code. I also have a Docker file here, which I'm going to show it to you later. I also have a package.json, which shows all of the NuGet or the node packages that I have. And the most important part is the index.js, because this has my additional changes, which, as you can see right here, I have this translate endpoint. What it does is I'm using an API from Azure, which allows me to translate a text, an English text, to another language, to two other languages actually. So I have all this code, and with this change, if I deploy this and if I build this and deploy the image into an Azure container instance, I'll be able to do some translation through those links, or through the link and through the IP. So this is just to show you the other way of deploying an image and how you can actually generate an image from this code. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. So again, this is just a basic translation code. And it's basically gonna act as an API. So what we're gonna do now is on this folder, we're gonna have to type in ACR for Azure Container Registry, and we want to build an image, or we want to build this code and be an image. You need to type in dash dash image demo translation API version 1. So this is just the name of the image, and the registry, which we named, if I remember, like right here at the top, ACI demo reg. So this ACI demo registry, and which file we are going to use for the generation of the image, a Docker file, the Docker file image. So if we go to the Docker file, you can see here that we're going to use Node. We're going to get, or we're going to copy the file, rather the app folder, and which working directory we're going to use. We're going to run the npm install to install all of the Node packages, and we're going to build it. And that's what we're specifically going to happen when we run this. So we can press enter, and it might take a while. But generally what's happening here is it's building the code, and it's generating an image, and it's trying to upload it to our repository of our registry. So now it's done. It took 37 seconds. It's actually longer than how it usually is. So yeah, now we're done with our build and our image. Once we refresh this, we'll now see our image right here. And if we go to the version 1, since that's the only version that we have for the tags, you can see that we can actually pull this Docker image using this command. But specifically, this is the link for our image, Docker image. So that's not really important right now, because if we try to create a new container instance, let's create a new one using the demo resource group again and name it translation API. We can now use the image source of Azure Container Registry, and we can pick the ACI demo reg. Okay, I think we need to do something about it. It's enabled for this registry. So I think what we need to do is to go back to the Azure Container Registry. Oh, sorry. And enable the admin user. And go back to the creation. Let's try it once more. Demo translator API. Let's try it again. There we go. Now it's enabled, and we can give it a new DNS label. Translator API, and the port will still be the same, and we can just review and create, just make sure that everything's fine, and it is, then press create. Again, this will take a bit of time, might take a minute, but ideally what's going to happen is, just like earlier, it's going to be deploying our container image. But this time, it came from a code that we have within the Azure storage account, which we built using the Cloud Shell and sent the image into the Azure Container Registry, which then we use to create for another Azure Container Instance. And there we go. So we can now go to the resource and try to access this. Translate text hello. And there we go. We are now getting, again, this is just an API. This is basically acting as an API, and we're getting the translation for this text. And we're getting hello and ciao. So it's working. It's working as expected. Now let's try it. Let's try the IP address, and it works like so. So now this is basically how you can deploy your container images or any container images using container instance, and it happens in less than a minute. And you can now access it and not deal with the infrastructure and all of those things. With this, we can now deploy our images easily and quickly. But I'm not done yet, actually. I'm gonna show you how you can actually integrate this into a Logic app. And I actually have one made already. And I just need to change something because I named it differently, but I already have this prepared. So what's happening here is whenever a new tweet is posted with a text of Bryan Anthony Garcia, which is my name, every 30 seconds, it will translate that whole or the whole tweet from English to those languages that I have on the list or on my API. Now, within that, there are a couple more things that are happening. We are also checking if we have the container running. If, again, this is where the integration is happening. You can actually use the Azure Container Instances and its properties and all of the things that you need from it through Azure Logic Apps. And we're checking, making sure that our container is running or the ACI is running. Checking right here, and if not, then we will create a new container instance with that name, translator API, and the rest, and if it's has already been created, already existing, we're basically getting the tweet and using our API, which is our ACI as well, and converting the value into an array, which is what it is. So now let's try it by clicking save and pressing run. So now this will wait for a trigger, which again is the name Bryan Anthony Garcia. So my name is Bryan Anthony Garcia. And what will happen is the Logic app will detect this message or this tweet, and it will trigger the whole thing. Oh, so I think there is one thing that we did wrong. And let's go back to the designer. And it's the HTTP because it's a different one. So we need to get the previous or the new link right here and change it. Oh, let's try it again. Oh, let's just remove this part. Okay, save it and run it again. And let's do it one more time. My name is Bryan Anthony Garcia. There we go, it was triggered again. Let's just wait for it to run the whole logic app. And there we go. Everything is done. Let's see what happened. For the new tweet, there's my name is Bryan Anthony Garcia, which came from me. Made sure that the translator API ACI has been created, which is true. And it got the tweet text. And we have this body that we got here. And finally, it was converted into a proper text within an array. So this basically is the value. Mi chiamo Bryan Anthony Garcia. So that it is. That is the result. So that is how you can use Azure Container Instances with the Azure Logic app. So with that, you can now get your containers up and running within minutes with the help of Azure Container Instances. Now, if you're thinking about the pricing, it's definitely cheaper, but it depends on your app and usage. For both Linux and Windows, it's 4 USD per gig, and I think it's 36 or 37 per per vCore. But then again, this is paid per second, so it will depend on your usage. For GPU, I couldn't recall. Anyway, for allocation of CPU and memory, the minimum is 1 for CPU and 1 for gig of memory, but the maximum will depend on your region. But the max of max is 4 vCores and 16 gigs of memory, while the maximum size of your container that you can deploy is 15 gigs. So I actually tried deploying a Minecraft server, which is more than a gig, definitely more than a gig, and it went pretty well. So yeah, that has been the first video of the container series from Thursday. We've started off with the basics, and we'll jump off to Kubernetes, specifically Azure Kubernetes services. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys on the next one.